Hi everyone, my name is Bertino and I am a tutor and an MSTC residency consultant with med school tutors. I've been doing this for a few years now, and some of you may remember me from previous Facebook Live sessions. I'm really happy to be here with you today to discuss some residency interview do's and don'ts. I know that this is the peak portion of residency interview season, and I wanted to send you guys off as you go on these interviews with some advice and the best professional practices that you can do to make yourself stand out. Residency interview season is a really exciting time. It's really enjoyable. It's a lot of fun. And you get to experience a lot of new programs and places and meet new people and experience what new cities have to offer. It really is a great time to explore different parts of the country. And really, it sort of brings me to my first point as to realize that interview season is not only just an opportunity for a program to learn about you as an applicant, but also for you to learn about a city or a program. You are also interviewing them in that process. Definitely take advantage of that. It would be a detriment to your experience to not have some prepared questions and inquiries, not only about the program itself, but what it's like to live in a region or a new area. So keep that in mind when you're traveling to these places and think about what it is that you enjoy in life and what a city or a program can bring out the best of. I'd also like to open up as a sidebar. If there are any questions or comments, please feel free to add them into our comment space in the Facebook Live chat. I'm happy to answer them as they come through, and we'll just continue on with our discussion here. So when it comes to residency interviews, it is a professional situation. The most important thing that I would recommend is to dress professionally and be on your best professional behavior. For men and women applying for residency, this means go out, get a suit, do what is a bit more on the conservative side. Now is not necessarily the time to go and show your most extravagant aspects of your personality, because you want to make things very controlled and very respectful in this time where they're trying to interview you professionally. From there, professional behavior, it almost goes without saying, but definitely don't be late to the beginning of the interview. Show up a little bit early. Early is on time in this case. And you want to put your best foot forward when meeting program directors. When you arrive at the interview, it's reasonable to not necessarily know where you're going. Feel free to ask for directions to places. This emphasizes getting to places earlier for sure. Also know that when you go to a hospital for an interview experience, you're going to want to, you're going to come in contact with a lot of different people who work for the department, for the hospital in general. These include people who might be greeters at front doors. These might be obviously the program directors themselves, the program coordinators, people who you may have been corresponding with to schedule the interview. And it's very important to maintain your most professional practices when you're coming in contact with all of these people. People talk, people know people inside of hospitals, and it's going to be very important that your image comes across as the professional or the young professional that I know that you all are. They want you to be there. You should show them that you want to be there. And it goes without saying that best behavior is definitely encouraged. When you're in the interview situation, you will have been invited, obviously. A lot of times there will be an opportunity to go to an interview dinner the day before or the night before the actual interview. I definitely recommend going to these events. They are really fun. It's a great way to meet the residents. It's a great way to see what the quality of life is like in a town. and opportunities of what kind of restaurants might exist if you're into food or something like that. Definitely talk to the residents, see what they like and don't like about the program. Most things are fair game. And as somebody who has gone on a lot of these resident interview dinners from both the interviewee and also the interviewer, I can tell you that it's really like a great opportunity for you to learn an unbiased perspective of the program. There's really nothing that can be used for or against you in an interview setting unless it's a total egregious act. Definitely be on your best behavior there, but also it's allowed to show a little bit of your personality and be involved in some nice conversation as time goes on. There will probably be some alcoholic beverages served at these interview dinners. Definitely know your limits, definitely control yourself and don't overdo it when it comes to these. Unprofessional behavior can be detected there. And while residents have a limited ability to determine who should match into a program. That's really decided from the interview day. Poor behavior at the pre-interview dinner, demonstrating a lack of self-control, can certainly be reported to a program director, and that will be taken seriously and could count negatively against you. So know your limits, know what is professional, and remain within that professional boundary. The actual day of the interview is usually a really exciting time. There are different spectrum of questions that you could be asked during the interview, and a different number or array of people, both faculty and potentially chief residents, that will be interviewing you on the day. It is an enjoyable experience. They really want to get to know you as a person and see how you will be a good fit for their residency training program. It is important to come prepared for that interview when you're meeting with the program director or faculty. Know your CV and your ERAS application backwards and forwards. Anything on there that you have elected to show them is fair game for questions. And you, especially if you've done a lot of research or you have a lot of things on it that you're proud of, be able to discuss those achievements fluently and with confidence, knowing them inside and out. It is a little bit of a red flag if something appears on your resume and you're not able to discuss it intelligently. So make sure that you know your accomplishments and make sure that you're able to discuss them in a professional and knowledgeable way. When it comes to characteristic interview questions that everybody should be expected to have a good answer for, I would recommend the top 3 are: 1, tell me about yourself. Definitely have a well-orchestrated answer to the question, tell me about yourself. This is an opportunity to tell people who you are, where you come from, what you know, who you are as a person outside of medicine. It's incredibly important. These people interviewing you want to meet people. They want to meet people who they can get along with. They want to meet people who they're going to be excited to work with for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, depending upon how long your training is. Be amicable. Tell a story about you that is uniquely you. Make yourself memorable in that moment. That said, they're not looking for an autobiography that goes on for hours and hours. You might only have 10 minutes with an interviewer. This question of tell me about yourself should probably be limited to maybe 45 to 60 seconds at the most. Should be a concise, nice statement that outlines who you are and brings your personality to the table. The second most commonly asked question during interviews is, why would you choose this field? What about this field interests you? I study radiology. A lot of my colleagues and friends study medicine, surgery, various iterations of that, pediatrics, OBGYN. It is important for you to have a real reason as to why you wanted to choose this. A lot of you probably wrote about this in your personal statements, which is fair. It is perfectly okay to go back and reiterate what you've written in your personal statement and bring it to life in your own personal storytelling way. This is going to be really good. That gives the program director and your interviewer a sense of self-worth and self-awareness. It's going to show people that you know who you are and that you are confident that the field that you've chosen is perfectly for you. Other common questions that are typically asked during residency interviews are, tell me something that you're particularly proud of, or tell me about a weakness of yourself. Be prepared a little bit with some of these questions. Think about what really makes you tick. Think about what really is something that you're proud of and that you are happy that you've accomplished. And if your application might be less than stellar or there is a weakness about yourself, be prepared to discuss it in a very appropriate manner. You don't want to be too self-deprecating during these things. This is an opportunity for you to showcase your strengths. If you're able to turn a weakness into a learning opportunity, something that really changed you as a person and got you more focused and more capable of doing the job that you're applying for, it's important to bring that to light and important to stress those positive aspects of whatever it is in the past. This segues into, what if you have sort of a blemish on your application? Maybe you've failed a STEP exam. Maybe you've performed poorly in a medical school course. Maybe something is there that might be less than desirable. Own it. It is almost expected that you will address the issue during the interview honestly, with integrity, and knowing that you are capable of rising above whatever weakness that was. If you don't mention it at all, it may come off as a little bit of you hiding something about yourself. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to say something, explain what the situation was, explain how you rectified the situation, and how you were a better person because of it, and how you will be set to be an excellent resident in a given program. Don't dwell on the negative, bring it up, address, and move on. When it comes to further discussions about interviews, every once in a while you may get thrown a curveball. Somebody might ask you a clinical question. How would you manage a patient? Or potentially tell me about an interesting case you encountered in medical school. These are also fair game. They're categorized as sort of the pimping level of questions. Some specialties may tend to do these more than other specialties. If you encounter one, don't freak out. A lot of the times they're just looking to see how you act under stress, how you act under pressure. And if you have a good baseline knowledge of clinical reasoning to know what the next step would be at the very least, and know when to ask for help when you need it. If you are asked about an interesting case in medical school, definitely be prepared to come in for one and be able to express it in a way that is a very typical and professional patient presentation, as if you were on rounds with that physician. A lot of the times they're asking you to present a patient because they want to see how well you can organize your thoughts in that situation of being put on the spot. Present a patient as you would on rounds as a medical student, or as almost as if you were delivering a step question. Start with the patient history, move on to their relevant physical exam findings, discuss their pertinent laboratory findings. You don't need to memorize an entire CBC or a chemistry panel, but just know what's notable. Go on to any imaging findings as applicable, and then go on to the clinical decision-making and leading diagnosis, and discuss what you learned about the case, why it was an interesting case, how it struck you, how it made you interested in something. Connect it back to yourself and show that there's a level of humanism in what you do. It's important to remember to be human during these things. You are being evaluated in your best ability to be the best person for the position, and I emphasize the word person. People want to see you excel as a human being in your physician career. And if you are able to show people that you are capable of adapting to stresses, fun to be around, a good storyteller, great to hang out with, if you're the kind of person who's going to be excellent to learn from on rounds, but at the same time wonderful to just shoot the breeze with at a bar after work, that's the kind of people that most residency programs are looking for. Do what you can to emphasize those positive qualities about yourself that I know you will have. Moving on, after the interview, it is possible that you may want to contact the program and ask them some other questions, or maybe just send a thank you note. Know the program's policy when it comes to this. Some programs will outright tell you that they do not want any thank you notes or any correspondence following the message. If you have any specific questions, they're happy to answer them, but maybe not any sort of love letters or things. I would respect those. If they're telling you that outright, they probably don't put too much weight on how much correspondence they get. They may not even read it. If there's no explicit denial, I think a thank you note is a perfectly professional and almost expected thing to do. They extended you an offer to express yourself professionally. You took that offer, you visited them. It is a great, it's nice to feel wanted. So it's nice to express thanks and gratitude to getting that opportunity to interview. I would recommend writing a thank you note. The style of the thank you note is perfectly independent, although I have heard that people do appreciate the effort that goes into a handwritten thank you note to the program director or pertinent people who interviewed you that day. A short email to follow up on a discussion that you had during an interview is an entirely reasonable point if that is accepted in the interview situation. For example, when I was interviewing, we talked a little bit about my research, and some of my interviewers found it particularly fascinating and asked several questions about it. While we live in 2018 now, and in the 21st century, paper is not necessarily the most important thing to bring around with you, I said, well, I have a copy of the paper, but it's in PDF format. I'm happy to send you an email with that as an attachment if you are interested in looking at it. And oftentimes they would say, oh yeah, that would be fine. There's no pressure on them to read it. You're simply just sending them something of interest. And in that short message, you can easily write, Thank you again for interviewing that day. As per our conversation, here is the paper that you and I discussed for your reading if you choose. Just know that I've attached it and I really appreciated the interview day, and move on from there. Short, sweet, to the point, sends a good message, and it is a good level of professionalism if it's welcome. Maybe some don'ts. Try not to stalk the program. If you are particularly interested in interviewing a place, don't necessarily go above and beyond to constantly call or be annoying on the phone or annoying via email of constant requests to interview somewhere, or sending too many love letters, sending too much correspondence. It can really rub a program the wrong way. Certainly not something you want to do if you're hoping to match there. In the concept of love letters, it is reasonable to send an interest of interview if you have not heard a decision from a program at a certain time. I think a reasonable time to hear back from most places would be probably about now, middle of November to the end of November. Again, remember that interviews are still being scheduled through December and January, so it could still be early for many programs. A short, simple email to the program coordinator or program director expressing interest in a program could be beneficial. It could also not. The verdict is truly out in those situations. The times that I have found, at least through my advising experience, that it could be beneficial is if the location you'd like to interview in is not geographically related to your home region. A lot of times places, say on the West Coast, may not necessarily look at too many East Coast applications unless they're above and beyond stellar, simply just because this person is assumed to be applying to and expecting to match in a place local to their home address. If you are somebody who is actively looking to relocate and hoping to go somewhere, it may bring your file to the top of the list if you have reason to be interviewed by that program, provided it's not outside of your competitive means. And a small email or a brief message of intent and appreciation to interview could be beneficial. When it comes later down the road, deciding to rank and looking at the efficacy or ability to deliver a statement of interest to a program is also, the verdict is still out. There has been a couple of papers that studied post-interview surveys and correspondence between medicine, specifically OBGYN residency program coordinators and directors and their applicants. And in that study, they have found that the explicit expression of the statement, "You are my number one rank on my list," said exactly as such, sometimes might affect a program director's rank order list if they particularly liked you. That said, saying that you're one of my top programs has absolutely no weight to it and will probably not sway the opinion of anybody going forward. Based on that data, it might be reasonable to send only one email message to your number one position and leave it simply at that. This does not need to be an ad nauseum letter. This does not need to be an ad nauseum email, just simply a letter of interest, expressing your fondness of the program and your appreciation of the day, and explicitly stating that this is your number one. My big warning to this, however, would be do not commit a match violation and tell multiple programs that they are your number one position. This is a dark mark on your record. Program directors talk to each other. They all know each other. They're all part of the same academic conferences and professional groups. And they were not born in a vacuum. They weren't born yesterday. These are very, very intelligent people who can see through petty attempts. So do not underestimate them. They talk to each other. They will know if you are telling multiple places that they are your number one, and it doesn't take too many times to be burned as a program director to have negative views on things like that. So act with a little bit of reason, know your boundaries, know what you are, know what you want, and be confident in your decision as to what to do. Occasionally, you might get love letters from the host program expressing their fondness for you. It is extremely flattering to get a letter like that, telling you why your interview was so great and how interested they are in you. I think it should be taken with a grain of salt. Appreciate the compliment. You could even reply and say, "Thank you. I felt the same way," if you truly did. and leave it simply at that. Do not let ego inflate. Don't let your head blow up with delusions of grandeur. You are not the only person who received that email, and take it with a grain of salt. Appreciate that things are going well for you and leave it simply at that. The decision of where you match and where you rank is entirely up to you and up to the computer algorithm. And know that there's not much that you can do to sway people's opinions. The best thing you can do during an interview is put your best foot forward, act entirely professional, and have respectful post-interview conduct with the people who you've met that day. If you do everything right, you shouldn't have much to worry about. I found, at least in my experience, that interviews generally go quite well. Remember that it's an opportunity for you to be yourself and to be personal and professional and show people that you're worth the position. Again, you're all very talented people. You've made it this far. If you're on interviews right now or going from place to place touring, you're already doing something right. You have been invited. Show these people how wonderful you can be and how great of a team member you will be. And I'm sure it will be acknowledged and recognized. Remember that the best residency program is the one that matches you. It's not any particular name or reputation or anything like that. It's the one that has confidence in you to be an excellent physician at that program and take confidence in knowing that. And really, I suppose that's the majority of the advice that I have to give about being professional in interviews. Have good responses to questions that are pretty obvious. I wouldn't necessarily make them super scripted. I wouldn't necessarily recite them from memory. I would practice them and have them be rehearsed, but I wouldn't have them be memorized. And from there, I'll open it to general questions. Again, if you have any comments or questions that you'd like to ask in the bar, please feel free to type them. I'm happy to comment on them. Otherwise, we've been going for a few minutes now, so if I don't hear anything left, I'll sign off. But it's been a real pleasure to talk to everybody today, and I hope that you take from this some confidence and some preparatory guidelines, and just be optimistic and happy that you're getting the interviews and know how to prepare for them and be as professional as possible and personable as possible on your interview day. Thanks for joining me. I don't see any questions coming up here now, so I will sign off. Enjoy your Thursdays, and I hope to see you back again soon on one of our future MST live Facebook Live sessions. See ya.